The hotel in Las Vegas was building a huge parking structure and room expansion. It became very difficult and dangerous for guests to park with all of the construction equipment moving around, so the hotel leased 25 acres across the street for guest parking. The guests were constantly complaining until the hotel purchased three 26-passenger buses to move them back and forth to the hotel. I joined the security, traffic, and parking detail. They had me directing traffic at the front door. Soon I became friends with the shuttle bus drivers, and they were making money, more than me, and they got tips too. After several months, one of the drivers told me that he got hired at an airport shuttle bus company and had given a 2 weeks notice. I went to Michelle, the department head supervisor, inquiring about the upcoming job vacancy, and she hired me immediately. The position required a Class B commercial driver's license, which I did not have. But I was allowed to study for the test at work and practice driving in the parking lot with one of the company shuttles. I also appointed myself in charge of maintaining the buses by checking the fluid levels, tire pressure, fueling them every day, and cleaning them out. I was always surprised that nobody else ever did this but me. The successful completion of 3 steps are required to get a commercial driver's license, also known as a CDL. A written test, a walk-around verbal safety inspection, and a driver's test. The written portion required 70% to pass. I got 98 on this part. The verbal part of this procedure was the hardest for me. Trying to remember all of the safety components by name was impossible. I would practice on my car and at home. I would practice at work. Eventually I felt confident enough to take the exam. They had to make an appointment in advance for the driving test. While I was doing the walk around, I noticed that one of the marker lights was burned out. Just like that, the examiner said that the bus was not roadworthy enough to complete the exam and that I would have to come back after the defect was repaired. This was crazy. I had to make an appointment a week in advance, and the examiner was busting my balls over a marking light. There was a truck parts store next door, and I asked if I could fix the light to be able to continue. The examiner gave me 10 minutes to repair the light. Fortunately, I had a screwdriver on board the bus, and I took the bulb out and ran next door and bought a new light bulb from the truck parts place and repaired the problem in about 5 minutes. While I passed the walk-around test, I knew guys that had taken the test 10 times and didn't pass the walk-around. So I felt relieved when I passed it on the first try. Next was the driving test. A guy had told me that the examiner will try to trick you sometime during the test by making you turn in front of an oncoming vehicle. If the oncoming vehicle has to hit his brakes, it's called impeding oncoming traffic and would ordinarily be a moving violation, but in this case it would be an instant failure of the entire test. I felt like the examiner was making it as hard as possible for me to pass. First I had to drive through safety cones in a parking lot and then parallel park. Next we drove out onto a public street. I drove through various speed zones, school zones. I stopped at railroad crossings, stop signs, and suddenly as we approached a certain intersection, he told me to turn left. I noticed a car coming toward me, but it looked like it was far enough away, so I turned. The inspector sprung into action, jumped up, and this was the trick that they were telling me about. He looked in the rearview mirror and he looked behind him to make sure that I didn't impede traffic. To his disappointment, I didn't. When I completed the driving test, the examiner advised me that I had passed. He signed off on my paperwork, and then I had to stand in line for another hour to get my license and pay the fees. Once I got my license, started driving on the relief shift. The shuttles ran in the daytime and in the early evening. It was great driving a commercial vehicle, and the sudden pay increase was outstanding. But soon I could see that driving circles in a parking lot wasn't going to get me anywhere. Plus, word around the campfire was that they would be phasing out the shuttles when the construction was completed.